should be live. Here we are.
There it goes.
Hello,
Hi.
everyone. Good evening. It is the very last live discussion of 2024. To believe it or not, the next time you see us will be 2025.
Yeah.
It's the end of the year. It's the end of DoubleBookedCo's book club for this year. We take the month of December off. Of course, we're still working away on DoubleBookedCo things. A lot of shipping, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
So if you are looking for any bookish gifts, definitely check out our Etsy shop. We have a lot of new stuff as well as our trusty old bookish gifts. So be sure to check that out. But tonight is our live discussion. We're going to be discussing Yellow Wife by Sadeqa Johnson. I think that's how you pronounce the first name, and I do apologize if I am mispronouncing that. But that's what we're going to be discussing this evening. We have a couple of really great questions. I hope that we can have a not so solemn discussion because it is quite the book. But before we get into that, we want to discuss what is upcoming. So we mentioned 2025. So I'm going to let Laura go ahead and tell you what's around the bend.
Right. So for January, as you guys all know, you hopefully all voted. We voted first for authors. We're doing a repeat author for January. The winner of that was Ruth Ware. And then you had the last 2 weeks to vote for which of the 3 titles you wanted. And the winner is The Death of Mrs. Westaway by Ruth Ware. So this is about just under 400 pages, I think. I don't know. There's a bunch of pages at the end here that I don't understand that are not numbered to me. I don't know. 370, let's say. So in January, we'll be reading The Death of Mrs. Westaway. This will give you enough time to ask Santa for a copy, or you can thrift a copy. I know I have seen them quite a few times, and I am not a big thrifter, so hopefully you guys can get a hand on one for cheaply or at the library, wherever. It should be available kind of anywhere. But that will be our January book. The date we'll be getting together to read for the first time, doing our live reading sprints, will be the 7th of January. It's the very first Tuesday. Hard to believe that's going to be here so fast, but it will be. And yeah, we'll have the month of December off, obviously, from any reading or anything assigned. I will still be reading, trying to finish up a lot of things before the end of the year. Do you have a bunch of reading plans before the end of the year, Dani?
December is my least squished month. It's really my like cushy, cozy, Christmassy month. I just read all Christmas books. And I usually so I'm really weird. I really enjoy rereading Skipping Christmas by John Grisham. I don't know why, but that Christmas book is just like my quintessential Christmas book. I love it. It cracks me up. And every time I read it, I get a little bit something from it, whether that be like, oh, these people are actually a lot more entitled than I read the first time. Or, oh, I don't think I really like the daughter as much as I did the first time. So it really hits me differently every year. So I may reread that. I didn't reread it last year, I don't think. I usually try to reread that book. But yeah, no, December is very much Christmas books. I've already hit my goal for Goodreads this year. It was 75 books. So that I hit just the other day. Thank you, Grace Goodwin. But yeah, so I'll probably exceed that. I'll probably hit 100 just because I have been reading a lot lately. Like I kind of hit a good curve on books. I've been getting a real good groove on audiobooks. And so that's kind of what December looks like. It's just the continuation of whatever I'm reading plus all the Christmas books. So
nice.
Yeah. Do you read Christmas books at Christmas time?
No. I mean to, and I have a little stack of about probably 10 or 15 or something, like middle grade and adult stuff. And like, I'm going to read them this year. I'm going to read at least 2, and I never read any of them because I'm trying to finish all the books I started this year and have not finished. And then also it just gets busy with work and everything. And I get everything so tired that I just sort of forget. And January comes and I'm like, dang it, I didn't read these again. So maybe I'll actually try to read one this year. I don't know. I have to read 18 more to, maybe it's 17 more now, to finish my prompts for my 52 book club challenge. And I have more than that, like triple that in books I've already started this year and haven't finished. So I have work to do. I'll be busy reading for sure.
Wow.
Yeah, not Christmas stuff. That's okay.
Yeah. I feel like once I get into the Christmas books, I just can't stop reading them because they go by so fast and they're easy to read and they just make you feel good. Like you just feel good. And I feel like I would rather feel like that at the end of the year than trying to like read as many books as I can. And nothing against what you want to do because
I get it totally.
Your path, but yeah, sometimes I see people on BookTube and I'm just like, take a break.
I know. I used to be trying to always
getting out of bed.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to get a certain number before that. And this year, like my goal for this year was to hit 75. I got that a couple months ago. So I think I'm at 101 now on Goodreads. On Storygraph, which is where I track everything, so like all my smut and stuff I read, I think I'm at like 120 or something. So that's good, but I'd like to be back up to like the 180, 200 mark, which is where I used to live comfortably all the time. So
right.
We'll see. Anyways, there's always something at the end of the year I'm trying to cram in the last month. That's just how I roll.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all right.
My daughter just got out of bed and I'm not quite sure if she's gonna get back in. Oh, she's getting back in bed. Okay. She went and turned the fan on and then crawled back in bed.
All right.
Works for me.
Yeah.
I think she turned the fan on. She went and touched the button and then looked like she likes to go and hide in the closet. But she went and crawled back in the bed after going past the closet. I'm proud of her. I was really nervous that I was going to have to like walk out of here for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's crazy because, yeah, when we started BookTube, I remember you were up in the high almost to 200 books.
Yeah.
And I myself, I think I've always kept the goal around 100 just because, like, I know myself. But, I mean, there are some years I think I hit 50.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, any books read in a year is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
We're not saying anything about people who only read like one book or two
Yeah.
books.
Oh, certainly not.
But
No.
this is us. Like this is based on what we have read in the past. And I really think that like BookTube sometimes puts a real, hits you really hard in that area. Because I feel like you're like FOMO and then you're trying to keep up with the Joneses, but then what it ultimately ends up happening is like you put yourself in slumps and I don't know. Anywho, totally off topic, but you'll get there. You'll get back to your 200.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, life will slow down and reading will ramp up. All good. So, anywho, let's go ahead and jump into our discussion. And we always start our discussion, and feel free if you're watching this in replay, put your answers in the comments below. We always look back on these and read those. And if you're watching, please feel free to comment in the comment section. So, Laura, as far as your rating, so that's where we always start. In a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being amazing, how would you rate this book?
I'm going to give this a very comfortable 4. I really enjoyed the writing, and I am incredibly thankful that it's in part 2 sometime. I don't know exactly when, but she starts to not give you every detail of everything. It starts to go faster. Like when she mentions like she had like her next 3 kids in quick succession or whatever it was, I was like, oh, thank God. Like, I don't know if I can handle all of that horrible detail all the time. I mean, there's still plenty that happens that is horrendous and literally gave me nightmares. But it's much easier reading after that. And you get kind of used to, in a weird way, you get used to the abuse and blood and things. And I don't know, I could kind of tune it out a little more. I didn't feel as visceral for me after a little while. So that was helpful. I was going to give it a 3 for a while because I thought it's just so much, so relentless, that I don't know if I can handle it. But like I said, it did get easier for me after that point when she sped up things a little bit. And I'm glad with how it ended. And I thought that info at the end too about the real people she based this on, that was really, really interesting as well. So yeah, comfortable for. I will absolutely read from this author again. I don't know if I'll go out and seek things out necessarily, just because I have so much here to read. But yeah, I really did enjoy this more than I thought I would. And yeah, comfortable with the 4. How about you?
Yeah, I solid 5 for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is the only 5-star read for me this year. And for me, I just felt like the entire time I was reading, I was completely captivated and like I couldn't put the book down. Like I read the first part in one sitting. It's like 80 pages and I could not put the book down. And not to say that it like when we say we enjoy this book, we don't enjoy its contents. We
Right.
don't enjoy what's happening. It's more or less for me being completely consumed and like you're being assaulted with so many things, so many gruesome events and details and just heartbreaking, heart-wrenching of like things that happen to these people, and not just one character but several characters, several beings just assaulted is the best word I can say, is because it's just it's like every time you turn the page some other atrocity is happening, and it's like insane. The book's insane.
Mm-hmm.
But I give it 5 stars because I think that the author did an amazing job of giving it a narrative and giving it a heart and giving the story a platform that you were able to stomach it to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
And you were given somewhat of an understanding of the depths a person would go to survive and still breathe, still, have empathy and still have a will to live. And we'll kind of talk about this in some of the questions, but a lot of the time that I was reading this book, I kept asking myself, like, what would I have done in that situation? And it's an impossible question. It literally was like, I have no idea. Like, I would be dead.
Mm-hmm.
I would be dead. I would not have survived any of that. I would literally be dead. So my jaw was basically unhinged the entire time I read this book. When you thought you had enough, it just assaulted you with more.
Mm-hmm.
There were a few bits of the story that I was like, I don't really think that's true. And not to say, not the torment or anything, but there was one scene in particular that I was like, nope, I don't care. That's not happening. But tis neither here nor there. It doesn't make a difference to the story, but I understand why it was there.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of moving right on into what our thoughts are, since we're kind of sharing those already. And as well as including Andy here. Andy read
Nice.
this in 2021 and gave it 4 stars as
Mm-hmm.
well. What were your overall thoughts?
I mean, I don't know. I believe everything that happened in here happened to somebody. I was familiar with The Devil's Half Acre before getting to this book. So when I saw that name come up, like when I was reading, I just thought, oh, like I was really trying to brace myself mentally for what was coming ahead, because I was familiar with the happenings that happened at The Devil's Half Acre and how Richmond was in general. And that was making me like preemptively sick before I even got into stuff. Knowing that. And I spoke with my mom about this a little bit too, because she was like, are you still reading that book? Oh my God, just finish it, please. Like, for both of our sakes, just please finish that book. So I said, this is where it was set. And she was like, Jesus, like, how are you reading this book? How is this fun for anybody? And I'm like, I don't think it's meant to be fun. At least I hope not. I think it's meant to be informative and like give people empathy and compassion who maybe wouldn't otherwise have for this, and to relate real stories in a way that is digestible for not only modern day audiences and is to a certain extent, but also just to remind people of like these things all happened on a regular basis for years and years and years, So having that was really tough mentally for me. And then having all of that played out and like hearing the names at the very end of like who really was the devil at the plantation, like, or at the place, and the family and everything, that was hard to remember because I had forgotten their names, but knew the stories. So yeah, this was tough. I'm not rating it any higher than a 4 because I read to escape and I read for enjoyment. That's like my main thing, is this is pleasurable. This was not pleasurable to read, but as you said too, this was made digestible and made the way she told the story and paced things especially made it okay to get your brain around enough to keep moving without having to stop or get stuck too much. And it kept, because you weren't quite sure what was going to happen to her, especially before she gets essentially sold. Not essentially, she does get sold. But before she leaves where she was born, that plantation, you really kind of go, God, what's going to happen to her? Is her mother going to make it? Like, what about this? And who's the father? And, all this stuff happens. And then once she gets to where she's going and, she's settled there for a while, you think, oh God, what fresh hell now? Because it's all misery all the time. And yeah. So yeah, this was tough, very tough. And I put it off for a very long time, like I said, because I knew it was coming to a certain extent. But I enjoyed it as much as you can enjoy a book like this, I think. The pages certainly flew by. Once you start to read it, you just kind of can't stop. You need to know what happens next. And there's no need for cliffhangers necessarily, like you would get in a traditional book per se, where you end a chapter on a cliffhanger. Like James Patterson does it all the time with stuff, like, oh, but then like who was at the door? So you have to read the next chapter started to get like, okay, who was at the door? There's none of that. And there is no need for that, because the reality of everything is cliffhangery enough. Like, it's literal life and death for all of these people that we come to know and love. So you keep reading to see if they survive that afternoon, that day, that whipping, that anything. I mean, that fire. I mean, so I like this. I enjoyed it. I am very glad that I read it. I can't imagine I will ever want to read it again. However, I will enthusiastically recommend this book to people. I have tried reading several books throughout the years, probably like a lot of people have, that are like, from a slave's point of view. Their life, sometimes they're based in history, like a specific person, sometimes they're not. But on the back of Yellow Wife, especially, there are quotes here from people I know, but Kathleen Grissom wrote The Kitchen Wife, and Kitchen House, excuse me. And I had heard good things about that for years and years. And I thought, okay, I'll read this. Like, the audio was supposed to be great. So I got the audio and I didn't like the audio. And I got the book out and I just couldn't read it. It was hard to follow the narrative, first of all. And second of all, it was just so brutal. And a lot of it was written, if I remember correctly, in like vernacularly, like how they speak, how people spoke then. So that was hard to get my brain around too, just to hear it and in my head and to get used to that language difference, which I normally don't have a problem with that stuff. Give me a page and I'm good to go. But it was phrases I had never heard before. Lots of things were hard to read. And so I couldn't read The Kitchen House. I couldn't, no matter how much I tried. And I tried a lot. So this is excellent. I will happily refer people to read this book because it is so readable and it does really pull you along. And it's great that it's based on real people in a real place in real history. But I never want to see it again. With the most respect, honestly. Sadeqa Johnson is wonderful.
Oh, I hear you there.
Yeah.
I hear you there.
So those are my rants.
Yeah, a lot of what you said, same here.
Mm-hmm.
I actually, on the flip side though, I had no idea. I completely ignorant to places like this.
Yeah.
And another reason why I am so happy that we read this book, because like you said, just to educate people, like these things happened, these places exist. And because if we're not, like, it's not like they teach this to you in school. I never learned this in school. Like, we never knew about any of these things. I mean, everything's glossed over, like this happened and then we moved on. When really did we? And I think I mentioned in one of my Friday reads, like, this book is so important among many others. There are several books that have the same kind of narrative, that have the same kind of story that is told, that is so important to tell, because people don't know. Like, people don't know. And this is a wound. This is a wound in the fabric of our nation that just won't heal. And it's because people are ignorant of things. People don't know. And the empathy doesn't exist then, because you don't know, you don't search, you don't look for it, you don't try to understand. And this is why it's things like this happened to people. And there's just so much that it's like it took a work of fiction to open your mind. And I have since I've seen, and with reading the author's note and etc., which I usually don't do, but I did in this case. There is a nonfiction called The Devil's Half Acre, which is the untold story of Mary Lumpkin, which is what this book is based
Keep forgetting her name.
Yeah. So, if you're looking to read further into this topic, and more on the nonfiction side, that is available. Now, I mean, overall, like I said before, I mean, again, the enjoyment of this is not because it's like, oh, it was so romantic. No, the enjoyment comes from the fact that the author did such a phenomenal job of capturing your attention and keeping it throughout the whole book. And yes, I feel like the parts of the book that were meant to be gruesome were gruesome, and the parts of the book that wasn't. I felt like this is gonna be a really weird comparison, but whenever I read a romance novel, I'm always like, it's okay, they're gonna end up together in the end. right? So no matter what happens, like, oh, there's a miscommunication, or oh, whatever the thing is that they can't be together, you're like, it's a romance novel, they'll end up together in the end. I don't have to think about it. It's gonna be fine.
Mm-hmm.
So you have that like level of trust, and like you just feel secure reading a romance novel because they're gonna be fine. In this book, anytime anything happened, I was like, they're dead. They're dead. Like, they're going to die. Someone, I mean, this is bad. Like,
Yeah, they're gonna be
every
killed.
time something happened, like, I feared for Monroe. Like, no,
Yeah.
I was so afraid for that boy. Every time he came onto the page, I was like, this is it. This is where it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just in this constant state of fear for this boy.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't, I had to put the book down sometimes because I was so afraid for him.
Mm-hmm.
And when the girls were all born, I felt better for them because they were seemingly white and very well cared for by the jailer. He didn't seem to be offended by their presence as he was like Phoebe and all the other slaves.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't fear for them like I feared for Monroe. And the moment that Essex returned, I was like, dead, dead, dead.
Mm-hmm.
When she gave that letter to the seamstress, I was like,
I know.
what
Like,
is your problem?
I said
What
out loud,
is
girl,
your
don't do that.
problem? I was like, I mean, literally on
Trust
one
her.
page, she's like, oh, I have to find somebody I trust. And I thought that she was going to go to the other yellow wife. I can't remember her name, but the more prominent one,
Yeah.
who she ultimately goes to. I thought that she's going to go to her first. No, she gives it to some random seamstress.
Right.
Did you not just say that you were going to have to be really careful about who you trusted, and instead you like just give it to the seamstress? Are you serious?
I know.
That doesn't make any sense. And poor July. Anyways, okay. Tangent. That's just overall thoughts. Let's get into some questions. We're 27 minutes in. On to question 1.
I know.
So the good, the bad, and the gray areas. Which characters felt the most complex to you, and why? Were there any characters you started out hating but began to understand, or other way around?
I gotta think about this. What do you think?
Yeah. So obviously Phoebe is a very complex character because we see her grow from a young woman to a like very strong, yet like she was very naive in the beginning, especially when she first makes it to this jail.
Mm-hmm.
And she knew she shouldn't trust people, but then again, when she was basically curated to trust the master because to a certain extent, because the mother kept saying like, you're not a slave, only in body but not in spirit, blah blah blah, and he's going to send you to school. And it was all pining on this hope, but with no real but just in case, don't trust this, don't do, I feel like the mom really didn't set her up for failure.
Right.
Because honestly, anything could happen. We clearly saw that when she got to the jail then. And so her character to me was very frustrating because you were rooting for her the whole time, obviously. And she would make certain decisions and you're like, what are you doing? Like, what? Why are you don't trust anybody. Everyone keeps saying, don't trust people. And then you trust the wrong people. Like, the people that are so obviously not people you need to be, like, getting involved with.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time, she was very smart and cunning and, like, clever, and she worked everything out, like, to help Essex get away the first time and then to help him get away the second time. So, like, she was so bold, but also so very naive. So she was very complex in the sense that, like, you just never really knew which way it was going to go with her.
Yeah.
I immediately, like, hated the wife on the plantation. Like,
Yeah.
she was a total witch. And then obviously I've had 2 kids in the last, like, 3 years. So I'm very fresh to motherhood. And the fact that this woman just, like, drowned her baby because it was a slave man's child, like, at her own, like, she raped the guy. I mean, that's what that is.
Yeah.
And just, like, instead of, like, handing it over to somebody else, like, here, care for, like, how easy would it have been to just give it to Phoebe and said, take care of this?
Right.
And she could have meant go kill it, and Phoebe would have just went and given it to somebody and, like, let's care for this baby, and they would have.
Yep.
But for her to just walk into the river, I was just like, I knew at that moment that this book was gonna just shred me a new one. I just knew it. And, like, for me, I mean, the hits just come on. I mean, it just, I feel like every other chapter there was some kind of infant mortality. I just was like, you gotta stop with this. And then by the end of the book, like, it was devastating for me. Like, it was so much and so horrific, some of the scenes involving infants. And by the end, I was just like, it's got to be told. The story's got to be told. I mean, lineages and possibilities and ancestry just washed out, just blacked out, just rubbed away. And it's devastating. And it's a story that needs to be told. So I had to put on my big girl panties and just take it and appreciate it for what it is. And yeah, so I hated every single white person because they all sucked. They all were terrible. And I think too, even at the beginning, like at the plantation, I feel like you're meant to kind of like Master Jacob, I think is his name.
Yeah, he isn't a horrible person. I mean,
but he is, because he has slaves.
No, but I was just about to say, I mean, for who he was, for the time he existed in, because you kind of had to own slaves in the South to be a successful person. You really had to. And yes, he slept with her mother, and, like, yes, Phoebe was his daughter and everything, but he didn't abuse them. He didn't treat them poorly. He treated them nicely. Like, he made sure that she learned how to read and play piano. Like, he wasn't a complete 100% a-hole. Like, he was okay.
Yeah.
Because that's the best option you could ever have gotten from a slave owner, honestly. Yeah. So I was relieved that he was okay. And it wasn't just everyone she was, like, from essentially was horrendous. Like, no, he was all right. And obviously her mom was okay too, you know. But I thought he was decent.
As compared to the rest of the lot. Yeah, well, I know. It's a tough situation because it's like
it's a book about slaves and slave owners. What do you expect?
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I'm saying he's decent. Like, you know.
Yeah. I just, in my thinking of it, I just think, like, must be really pretty convenient to, like, make this makeshift family with a woman that can't say no. And then, like, that makes you a decent person. And I'm not trying to argue with you. You have absolutely valid points. I'm just being the advocate here. And I just, again, the time frame, people think what's right is right when it's horribly wrong. But yeah, it's just, because obviously I'm putting the screen of 2024.
Yeah.
You're a rapist, is what you are.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. I don't feel like there was any characters that I started out hating that redeemed themselves, or I began to understand. If I hated them to start, I hated them all the way through.
Yeah.
I didn't really like, even though like that cook that she first met when she came to, even though she was like, kind of bristly and everything, like I never disliked her because I understood her situation and where she was coming from and all that. I didn't feel like anyone was outwardly mean to her, even if they were direct, or even the mistress he ends up taking. I can't remember what her name was. I didn't dislike her. I mean, they're all in the same situation. They're all under his thumb. They're all just trying to survive. So I never really begrudged anybody if it was a odd situation where they may have said something to get ahead kind of thing. But I don't feel like she really did. I don't think she did. I feel like she knew information, but I don't think she ever used it. But yeah, I don't think. Were there any characters for you that you?
The only one that the only like surprise, which is not a surprise, was the new wife of Phoebe's father, because I knew she would be the worst person. As far as young Phoebe's life concerned, I knew she was the worst person around. I knew when she was pregnant that it immediately was a slave's. I hoped it wasn't X's, but I kind of had a feeling. I knew she would kill that baby, absolutely 100%. I thought she would smother it or strangle its neck. Sorry to say, that's horrible. I didn't think she would drown it because that requires so much more effort to walk yourself all that way. And she is too lazy and too snobby to, I think, put any kind of effort into anything. So that was surprising that's how she chose to get rid of that child. I didn't think she would ever let that kid live, just because, again, of who she is. And she effed up, essentially. And these are the consequences, but we can't have that because she's perfect, because she's white and she's young and she's married to the master. So that can't be a thing. That can't exist. That's not even a possibility in her world, in her brain, So he had to go somehow. This kid had to go somehow. So I was surprised that, like I said, she took that much effort to getting rid of that baby.
Well, and
Because
it's clear that it wasn't like the possibility of that child even living. I mean,
yeah,
like knowing that he was Black was his death sentence, because that's how much hate she had for the race. Because, like I said before, she could have easily given that baby to any of the other
absolutely.
women.
She
And
could have said, Phoebe, take care of it.
all they had to say was the baby died in childbirth.
Right.
Very common.
Yep.
Easily could have happened. Because he was away anyways.
Right.
Easily could have said that. Do you think anyone's going to talk? Anyone in that room?
Not.
No. Because then it's their life on the line or whatever. Could have easily given that baby away.
Yeah.
Just terrible.
I know. So she was the one I was the most like, well, of course she's going to be horrible because it's her. I mean, that's her role. And I was surprised at how long it took for her husband to reveal himself to her in little ways. It took a long time. I mean, he let her give birth to Monroe and take care of him and had July there to take care of him for quite a few years before anything really happened to Monroe or to her. I was really holding my breath for a long time because I thought that would start within the first month. Like, knowing she's pregnant when she gets there would be like, if she survives that at all, like, I thought he would have beaten her so badly that she would have miscarried,
Yeah.
So that was surprising to me that it took him so long to take any kind of action to reveal himself to be who he actually is. That was surprising.
Almost as if it was like a seduction. Like,
yeah. And like you're talking about her being naive, she absolutely was naive in a lot of ways too. I mean, she's hip to what can go on, I think, but because her original master was her father, and he treated her nicely. I mean, she still worked hard, of course, and saw other people, things happen, but it seemed like her home plantation was okay. Like they were treated well considering circumstances, and they got, you know, like holidays off, and they always got a new shirt and new shoes and all the stuff. And it's all small potatoes. And I'm like, please, I'm not defending slavery or people that own them. I'm absolutely not. But like that reality where she grew up, where there was some kindness and some humanity shown to people, even if it was a little teeny, like barely anything to qualify as humanity, to then go and be married to this infamous, horrible person and have everything that you saw there was like, girl, you cannot trust these people. This is not like where you came from. This is very different. Very different. Like, oh, yeah. So I was surprised that she fell for his stuff. But what are you supposed to do? You let your guard down after a while. You can't live in fight or flight forever. You have to let it down sometimes, even if it's just for like a meal or whatever. Like, I just, yeah. So yeah, it was her father's wife was the worst, and then obviously her husband and all of his cronies. I mean, anyone like that doesn't have a soul at all. There's no way you have a soul. You aren't even a person.
Well, segueing, as we're talking about Phoebe and her choices, you know, what do you think about Phoebe's decisions throughout the book? Were there moments where you're rooting for her, or times you disagreed with her choices? I think you're always rooting for her regardless. I mean, you're rooting for the whole place. You're just rooting for like it to burn down, or for, you know, abolition to get there, but in your head too, I keep thinking like, what year is it? And like, it's not like it's just like a wave of like, you're all free. I mean, that's not. And it's just devastating. It's just, yeah. So you're always rooting for her. I definitely, like I mentioned before, disagreed with her trusting that seamstress.
That's like I said, that's the one time I yelled at the girl, don't do that. Like, what are you doing? The first time you met this woman, she was so straight up rude and mean to you until she found out who your husband was. And then she was kissing your butt. And even though time has passed and like she's there taking care of your kids, she seems nice to your face. You cannot forget your initial her, how she actually is. That's her real face. Like, I was trusting her. I was like, no, oh my God,
didn't she
so
take
stupid.
it to the Reverend? Why didn't she take
seriously?
it?
Seriously.
I think that was the one thing that I was like,
I know. Abby or July or her friend, like Sissy, was it her name? Sissy, something with a C.
Sissy was the mistress. Yeah.
Caressa.
Yeah, Carissa, I think. The other yellow wife. Yeah.
Yeah, like trust her.
Yeah.
You know? My gosh.
Yeah.
So yeah, out of all of her decisions, the only one that I really was mad at was that, like, her trusting that person. Like, oh my God, no. Everything else was like best of a bad situation, or based on the knowledge she had at the time. Like, you do your best you can. You know, that's all anybody can do. And you are rooting for her the entire time. Like, please get out alive. Please make sure Monroe is safe. Once she met Essex again, I was like, please do not let him die here. Like,
I know. And like every time she kept going to him, I was just like, oh my God, you are going to get caught. I mean, it could be a setup. I mean, because we clearly know that this guy is very malicious, like a very a jealous person. And like, he sets her up all the time. Like he when he put the book in the room, when she first got the wife's bedroom, like from that point on, I would be like, in a constant state of paranoia. I would be in a constant state of paranoia of, this is a trick. This is a trick. This is a trick. Like I would be just in fear all of the time. And obviously a person can't live like that, but like when this notorious person comes to the jail and they set up a freaking fair bazaar to watch him get flogged. Maybe it should be in your best interest to send somebody else to wash his wounds.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you got, like, beat when you went to help random people when they were cleaning out the sty.
Right.
What do you think is going to happen to you when you go up to this person that your husband loathes with every pore of his body, that he has set up such an extravagant event, inviting women and children to watch this? And this is the other thing, and Allie mentioned this in her Voxer chat.
Yeah, I got to catch up on there.
But the fact that like this glorified event, which is something that happened like with lynchings and all of this stuff, like, and even like public death. We've seen it in England, like witch trials, all these. Why are people so like interested, captivated? Like, it's like a train, like, cannot look away. Why are people, supposed Christians, supposed people who like have even just love for their fellow man, why are you coming to watch people at the guillotine, at a burning, at a lynching, at a flogging? What is the desire?
I know, I don't know.
Because one, what does that mean about you? And the second part of that is like, you're saying this is okay. This is a desirable event. Oh, haha, so glad we brought our picnic basket. Like, I can't even understand the thought process to say, yeah, I'll be there. Like, I imagine, okay, so in like real time, like right now, this would be like a Facebook event. Are you going, declined, or interested? There'd be like 4,000 people interested. Like, seriously? Like, what goes through people's minds? Like, at what point in history was it be like, it's not okay to go and watch people die? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what is it? What was it? Like,
I don't know.
what point in time did the switch flip in the, Homo sapiens brain that says, not a good idea. It's pretty gross. And like,
I don't know how anyone would get any kind of enjoyment out of watching someone be tortured. I mean, and that's one thing too throughout history, watching so much and reading so much and talking to parents who are interested in this stuff too so much. Like this is unfathomable. You're never going to understand it. Don't even bother trying, because you will never, as a person with empathy and sympathy for people and understanding and compassion, you will never be able to access a part of your brain, nor should you want to, where that makes sense. And you're like, yeah, I want to watch a person be flayed and, drawn and quartered for funsies. Like, no, it's not going to happen. So just go, okay, that happened, and it happened all over the place, all over the world, every continent, happened all the time. Thank God it's not now, when you'd be essentially forced to go because everyone was going. It's horrible. Humans are horrible. Humans are horrible. Yep.
anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of which, freedom versus survival. How do you think you would have handled Phoebe's situation? Would you have had similar sacrifice to survive, or would you have taken more risks? I think, and I'm thinking specifically to her desperation for her children. Along those lines, I would be in the same boat. I would have done anything for those kids, because they're an extension of you, and they are, they don't have any of the tools, or they're innocent. They're pure. They cannot fend for themselves. So I would have done anything like she did. Would have done anything to keep those kids safe. Especially Monroe, because he had nobody. She was his only lifeline. I mean, obviously I had July and a lot of the other
Yeah.
servants in the home to like help him in the sense of like caring for him when she couldn't. But realistically, she was the only shield he had. Because as long as the devil was happy and not thinking about Monroe, then everything was okay. But yeah, that I mean, would I have taken more risks? No, I would have been hiding, and I would not have had the strength that this woman had. I would have lived in fear. I mean, this whole the whole time reading this book, every time something happened, I was just like, there's no way. I would be in a constant state of fear. I would be in a constant state of paranoia. And I don't think I would have survived. I probably, I mean, I can't even imagine. I think about myself and my current situation with my daughter having heart disease. And I mean, there's days that, you go days where you're like, everything's fine. And, she doesn't appear to be sick. Everything's good. But then in the back of your head, you're always like, this is ultimately going to kill her. And there's nothing you can do about it. So I know if I was in that situation, I would have done anything.
The other thing I think I would have done differently is try to get Monroe out after he came back, after he was like, the master let him come back again. I would have made plans to get him out ASAP, and I would have talked to the guy who eventually left on his own, who ran away. I forget his name. Names blanked. Yeah. I would have talked to him and been like, I need to get my son out of here. He is not safe. It is extremely clear. Like, we need to move on this. Like, that's the thing I would have done differently. Aside from not tell that stupid seamstress, like, 1,000%, I would never have done that. But I would have moved Monroe, absolutely, because like you said, there's no way he's safe, and it's all a whim. And if her husband happened to catch a glimpse of him just walking past the house, he could have just had changed his mind and gone and grabbed him and whipped him till he died. I mean, so that unknown, that part about it, I would have tried to move Monroe, but everything else, I would have done what she did timing wise, at least.
I don't think I could have ever, like, when she would go to church and she'd have to leave him behind, there's no way I would have been able to go. I'd been like, nope, I won't go. Let everyone else go. I'll stay with Monroe. Because, like you said, he could have dropped an apple and the guy could have seen it and then been like, you're wasting food. And then, like you said, whipped him to death. Like, I wouldn't let that kid out of my sight.
Yeah. Yeah. And life was so much tougher. I mean, no one expected to live like we live now. Like, so much of our healthcare is, how long can you live? And I look at my mom too, and thankfully she's doing very well. 2 years out from something, like, but this is what's going to probably kill her unless it moves to her brain, and then that will be the first thing that goes. That will be the thing that kills her. But you, not to be blasé about it or anything, but you get used to death after a while, and you get used to the idea of ultimate, like, knowing what's going to happen to people. Like, you have to adapt to it, and it just becomes a thing that exists. And it's not a judgment necessarily, like positive or negative. Obviously it's negative, obviously not positive, but like, this is a thing that is happening, and you still have to eat something, and you still have to vacuum your floors and do laundry and go to work, and you just get used to the shock and trauma of it, and it just becomes a normal part of life. And growing up seeing people getting sold, and being at the Devil's Half Acre when she first got there, and seeing what it was, most of the world was like that, sold and everything. That was the worst place probably that I know about, at least. Not that I've done extensive studying on it, but a decent amount. But that's probably the worst place that you could have possibly been. And to be able to exist and survive with that, knowing that's happening behind you 24/7, it just is a thing that is. and it's just there, and you cannot think about it too much because you got to function, you know. Yeah.
I think about that one girl that one of the fancy girls that she had to dress, the one that kind of made her acknowledge the fact that like she was part of the system.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I felt like that was a really good addition, because it was like, how do you deal with that? How do you live with that? How do you live with yourself? And on the flip side of that is everything you just said. Like, this is my reality. If I don't do this, what's going to become of me? Or what worse thing am I going to have to do?
Mm-hmm. Which one of my kids will he decide they shouldn't be alive anymore? You know, it could be any of them. Monroe would be first, obviously, because he is more Black than the other kids are, and they aren't his. It's not his, so he'd be the first to go. But any other the ones aside from Hester, he could have taken any of them at any point and just been like, nope.
No.
Yeah.
I think we kind of touched on this one a little bit throughout all of the questions, but was there anything about the time period that you found particularly eye-opening or shocking? Did the book change how you think about that era? I don't think it changed how I think about that era, because I mean, there's a lot about, yeah. I think it was eye-opening in the fact that I was not aware of these particular establishments.
Mm-hmm.
But the stuff that happened there, very much aware of happening at like plantations, and I knew of like marches and stuff like that, but more in the sense of like being sold to like another plantation or something like that. That's the degree that I knew from that.
Mm-hmm.
Or like I've read stories of like from like slave ship situations. So
yeah,
I'm not ignorant to the fact of very horrific things within that slave culture, but was not aware of these specific establishments.
mm-hmm.
But it's all shocking. I mean, not surprising, but always shocking.
Yeah.
Always shocking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. The only thing that changed and like why I find this book hard to read and why I did not want to read it initially is because knowing specifics, they stick in my brain. Like things that I'm here will pop up in my subconscious throughout the day, and then mostly at night when I'm trying to sleep. If I've got anxiety or something, this will keep me awake for literal years to come. I'm not exaggerating when I say this. This will haunt me for years to come. That's why I don't like to read stuff like this, because knowing a specific instance, I can put a name to it and a potential date to it. That's what bothers me. Like, I know things happened. I know women were whipped so much that they gave birth. I know this is a thing that happened, right? In general, I know what happens, but I didn't need to know it was this particular plantation that I already knew about. I didn't need to know, like that. That's the stuff that bothers me, is the detail and the specificity, because then that will stick in my brain forever. Like the horror of everything, slavery in general, everything, how humans treat each other. That's like a general wash of awfulness that just is like a 30% level of anxiety that exists with me all the time. Fine, right? But it's all the specifics and like having someone witness these specific things. That's the part that is the hardest for me. And that's why I don't read stuff like this, because it's so horrible, because I know they happened, not in just a general way, but like, yeah, these things happened, but to have it reenacted and put a name to some people, like, that's what makes this stuff so difficult for me.
Yeah.
Not that it's just because it is horrible, and it should be difficult, and it needs to still be read. Stuff like that still should be talked about and everything, but especially I watch a lot of documentaries, and I read a lot about genealogy, and I read a lot about slavery in general, just like as a thing. So this was hard, and it should be, it needs to be, but yeah, that's why I don't read a lot of nonfiction about this, because I see blips, and I can see things, and I can talk to the ancestors, like they talk to ancestors of people who have been through this, and it's like, okay, God bless you, I'm so sorry, but like, let's go to something else. Like, okay, but this has also happened as long as people have existed. People have always owned other people. It's not, sadly, not a new thing. This is a thing that happens all the time and has always happened. Chinese people own Chinese people. Like, it's just a thing that happens, a thing that exists because people are awful, you know? So you just kind of go, okay, can't handle it. I'm done. Gotta walk away. I want to sleep eventually. So, yep. I know we were, back in high school, we toured the South a couple of times for band and or orchestra and or choir, because I was a super cool person. And we got offered to go on a tour of a plantation, and I just couldn't, like, I just was sobbing on the bus. I'm like, no, take me to the hotel. I cannot do this. Like, this is not fun for me. This is not like a fun educational thing for me. This is like haunt myself the rest of my life. Not doing it. Can't. Like, mm-mm.
Yeah.
Going on the walk in Richmond, I'd like to be able to think I could do that slave walk where you stop at all the stops, and you stop at Devil's Hammock, and you stop at the bridge. I could maybe do 1 or 2 stops, and I'd have to like be like, I'm sorry, I can't,
Yeah.
So it just reconfirmed the awfulness that is slavery, which I didn't really need, but yeah.
Well, those are the questions that I picked out of the ones that I added on Voxer, but I thought just outside the box, like as far as like reading, and what prompted this question, have you read anything like this before, is, in the back of the book, we have the author's note, where she discusses, where the the inspiration from this comes from. We learn that this is based on a real person, Mary Lumpkin, at the Lumpkins jail in Richmond. And she also refers to a lot of the literature that she researched and read to prepare for the novel, which includes several books, and I'm just going to read them here quickly. Here it says, I read several books in preparation for writing Yellow Life, including Money Over Mastery, Family Over Freedom by Calvin. I'm not even going to try to, it's like Schermerhorn. Calvin Schermerhorn. I'm pretty sure that's how you say that. And then Back of the Big House by John Michael Vlach. Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl by Harriet Jacobs, which I have read and is excellent.
I've read that, yeah.
Yes, that is a good one. Within the Plantation Household, Black and White Women of the Old South by Elizabeth Fox Genovese. A History of the Richmond's Theological Seminary with Reminiscence of 30 Years' Work Among the Colored People of the South by Charles Henry Corey. Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave by Frederick Douglass. 50 Years in Chains, or The Life of American Slave by Charles Ball. Which she references to, that one is where she kind of got the idea of that hot pepper wash for the Essex flogging, which was just gruesome. And then The Known World by Edward P. Jones, Slaves Waiting for Sale, Abolitionist Art and the American Slave Trade by Maury D. McInnes. The Richmond Slave Trade, The Economic Backbone of the Old Dominion by Jack Tremmell and Alphine W. Jefferson. And then she lists just online periodicals. So like I said, I myself did read Incidents of the Life of a Slave Girl, which is excellent. And I also read, so that one is a nonfiction. That's a narrative nonfiction. But I also read, I would say in the last 8 years, I don't remember, probably 8 years ago, Homegoing.
Yeah,
And
but
I
yeah,
don't remember the author's name.
it's Jesse.
Oh, yes.
Mhm.
Yes, thank you.
Mhm.
And that was probably the first time that I ever truly read, like, past incidents, a narrative so what's the word I'm looking for? It was so raw, and it follows like basically a family tree that kind of divided, and one part of that tree is in Africa and one part of that tree is in America, and slavery has affected both parts of it. And each story is so compelling and so devastating, and you just can't imagine. And I thought that book was fantastic. And I was so, it was heartbreaking, but you're so thankful for the opportunity to be educated in these stories of people, which again, it's fiction, but based on, I mean, they're based on real things. They're based on happenings and circumstances and events. And it's stories like that need to be told. Stories like this that need to be told. So I am very thankful. Kim, thank you if you're watching. So thankful to have read this. As gross as it made me feel, it was and is a book people should read. I mean,
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
There is, okay, so Archipelago Books, they are an independent or small press, and they do a lot of world literature, like a lot of translations, like first time for Tanzanian translated to English or whatever it is, so probably 15 years ago, I got into their books and got into their collection, and I read a couple of books. I mean, the specific country is going to escape me, and I apologize for that, but it's like a fictionalized account of this young man's life who was a Sudanese child soldier, guerrilla soldier. Horrifying. That one, there was a crocodile on the cover for that, but that was immense. And a lot of their stuff has to deal with slavery in general, like from all continents, how it has affected them and their family, and learning about wars that are from our more recent history that I don't know anything about, from like the early 1900s, that not like World War I or II, but like the Boer War. I'm familiar with the Boer War, but I couldn't tell you specifics. I don't know why it was fought. I know where it was fought, but like I don't know what they were fighting about. Like all the stuff like that, and like stuff. I'm not really good with stuff in Asia either. Like history there, so many blank spaces, more blank spaces than not. But like Archipelago Books has a lot of really great stuff. So if you want to just check them out in general, if someone wants more information about world literature, they're a great place to start. A lot of stuff is deckled edge and French flapped, which is annoying to me because I don't like those two things in books. And they're also like a square shape. They're not like a regular rectangle, like more of a square. Fun to read, but also kind of like, I don't like those French flaps. But they're a great publisher that has a lot of nice world literature.
Yeah, that's fun. Well, good. Okay. Well, I really think that's all I can take on talking about this book. I mean, again, I'm not taking away from the fact that it's an excellent read, and I highly recommend it. And if I have the opportunity, I would be telling people to read it if they.
It's excellent.
Choose.
Horrifying.
But it's also horrifying.
Yeah.
So yeah. So on that note, I think we're gonna end it there. For next time, Again, January's read is The Death of Mrs. Westaway by Ruth Ware. We will start that for January. So again, we skip the month of December, and we'll start again in January. And the next time you see us here for reading sprints, so live reading sprints, will be January 7th. Same time. We'll continue at this time. So it'll be the first and last Tuesday of every month, depending on the month. Sometimes if there's a holiday that sneaks its way in there, we kind of shift a little bit. But for January, it looks like we will be the 7th for reading sprints. And I believe it was the 28th for the live discussion. Yes, the 28th. So 7 and 28 for January. But until next time, I really hope you guys are taking care and having great holidays. Thank you, Andy, for being here. We appreciate you.
Yes, thank you, Andy.
It's lovely to always have you here. Yeah, we have Thanksgiving coming up in a couple days. So for everyone here in the States, happy Thanksgiving. Hope you are able to take care with family. And Kim, we hope you're doing well if you see this. And for everyone else, we're thankful for you anyways. And then for anyone who celebrates during December, any holiday that pertains to you, happy holidays. And yeah, we hope that the end of the year finds you well, and that you bring in the new year healthy, happy, and safe. What more can we ask for?
All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving, happy Christmas, happy Kwanzaa, happy solstice, happy everything, and happy New Year. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.